Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for the Crisscross Virtual Challenge webinar series. Human Kinetics is happy to be one of the sponsors of this innovative and exciting virtual challenge, and I know you're going to enjoy today's presentation. So let me turn it over to Jan Seeley, co-director of the Christie Clinic Illinois Marathon Race Weekend and creator of the Crisscross Virtual Challenge. Jan?
Thank you, Sue. And as always, we want to start by thanking Human Kinetics for helping us put these on, and Sue for driving the technology behind. Before we get started today, I always have just a few housekeeping details. So since our last webinar 2 weeks ago, all of the packages that needed to be shipped to our participants who opted to have their swag shipped to them have been mailed. How do I know that? Because I did it. I think all of us on here have done our fair share of packet stuffing and mailing. I know, Doug, you could talk for an hour just about that. But and just to clarify, everybody who registered through the 29th of December, your stuff was either down at Body and Soul a few weeks ago, or your stuff was mailed. I checked ShipStation this morning, which is the software that I use, and it looks like all but 20 of the over 400 packages that I used, stuffed, and mailed have already arrived. So that's great. And no worries for any of you guys who registered from December 30 and later. We are getting, it's more just the shirts, the quarter zips, and the Brooks tops that we have to get more of. We have all the other swag that you got. So once we get that, we will do another round of swag distribution. So okay, I think that is that. And with that, I would love to introduce our special guest today, starting with Doug, who is wearing a Big Sur Marathon shirt. Doug Thurston is the race director and executive director of the Big Sur Marathon Foundation in, I'm sure, sunny, warm California, Carmel, California. What's the weather out there today, Doug?
Well, if I opened up my blinds, you'd see the snow piled way outside my office. No, it's about 55 degrees, partly cloudy. So typical day.
We're not too jealous. The nonprofit Big Sur Marathon Foundation organizes 2 large race weekends annually, the Big Sur Marathon in April and the Monterey Bay Half Marathon in November, with 25,000 total participants between those 2 race weekends. Doug has been a full-time race director and running journalist since 1984. A lot of people do and don't know this about Doug. He's also a World Athletics Ames Level A course measurer, one of about 25 in the US. In fact, some of the local Champaign-Urbana people may remember seeing Doug out on his bike back in August of 2019, along with Mike Lindemann, recertifying our routes, which we have yet to run on since they were recertified. Doug has finished more than 600 road races, including 25 marathons and at least 3 dozen triathlons, as well as mountain bikes and many, many century rides. So welcome back, Doug. And you actually have a little bit of a connection to Illinois, not even a little bit of a connection. Tell us.
I went to high school in Illinois, very, very small school in the western side of Illinois that some people may have heard of, right on the Mississippi River, called Nauvoo, Illinois. And so I went to school, graduated in 1978 from Nauvoo Calusa High School, and also went 1 year of college in a small Division III school, Monmouth College in Monmouth, Illinois. So yeah. Some of the downstate and mid-state folks may have heard of Monmouth College.
Yeah, well, it's great to welcome you back and welcome you home. Beth Shluger is founder, president, and CEO of the Hartford Marathon Foundation. She and her team produces a whopping 35 plus annual events throughout Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, including road races, triathlons, and run training programs with over 50,000 participants annually. They've been in business since 1984, and their marquee race weekend is the Eversource Hartford Marathon in October. One of the things, I've been a huge fan of Beth for years. She's one of my mentors, and they do a lot of cool events, and sometimes they do one-time events. And the one that has always stuck with me is that back in 2013, they staged the largest inaugural 5K in the world to benefit the Sandy Hook School Support Fund, which resulted in a donation of $475,000. The Hartford Marathon Foundation was the largest single donor in the United States to the Sandy Hook Fund and was awarded for being the best amateur sporting event in the United States by Sport Travel magazine. Beth, we're all runners here, so I'm going to just talk a little bit about that. But Beth's run road races throughout the Northeast, including 15 marathons. She also, in an earlier life, was a chef and a wine specialist, and she still today conducts, maybe we'll have you back for that at the end, wine tastings throughout her community. She loves to travel the globe and do a lot of writing. She's married to Superior Judge Beth Shluger, and together they have 2 amazing children, David and Olivia, and let's not forget the great new grandson, Will. So welcome, Beth.
Thanks, Jan. It's great to be here. And I've traded my wine for Nuun, Mike. So.
Great. Well, speaking of Nuun, we're so excited to have Mike Sommers with us. He has spent the last 10 years building meaningful partnerships between brands at the intersection of fitness and wellness. And as the Experiential Marketing Director at Nuun Hydration, Mike has spent the last 7 years working to establish Nuun as the category leader in the endurance events industry. Closer to home, this is kind of old home week here for me. Mike attended the University of Illinois, and he graduated in 2009 with a degree in kinesiology. And my favorite fact about Mike is that in 2011, in our 3rd year, it's the first year after the ownership changed to the local group, he finished 10th in our marathon, and he ran a really fast time of 2:41:29. Now, Mike, have you run faster than that? Because I noticed the year before you sandbagged and ran a 3:12, but you came back a year later in 2011 and ran a 2:41. Wow.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, the first year I didn't have such a great time. I walked most of the last 3 miles. I started out okay, and then I had a rough finish. Yeah, no, I love the Illinois Marathon. My first marathon, obviously went to school there, so super happy to be here. Champagne's got a soft place in my heart, and you know what? So does Galesburg, Illinois, Doug. I had a bunch of friends
really
that went to
close.
Monmouth, so right down the road.
Well, year 2, which was the year you ran the 3:12, was our really hot year. It was a blessing in disguise because we learned so much about our medical and the changes that we needed to make as a result of that year, and our medical plan that we still have today kind of grew out of that. So that was really nice. Before we get to some specific questions for our guests, I just want for our audience to get just a very brief snapshot of what the endurance sport industry looks like numbers wise. So, I mean, it's pretty massive when you think about it, just so you have a sense of how our industry has just been gutted by the pandemic. So here are the numbers. The sport endurance industry brings in $3 billion in annual revenues. We put on over 50,000 races. That keeps over 30 million people moving. 500,000 people, including the 4 of us, are all employed in the industry. And because of we always like to do a lot of good things for our communities, over $500 million is raised for charities through our industry. So, our races are at different times of the year. Doug's is in April, same time Beth's got races throughout the year, but their marquee event is in October. But, the industry was hit pretty early by COVID. By the 2nd week of March, races were already starting to cancel. I remember being on the phone, Doug, with me and you back in March and thinking that this was just going to be a few-month thing. And, do we move our races to the fall? And sure enough, within a few months, this really like a complete ravaged community. All of the races just went down. And even now, as we are into the first part of 2021, so many big races are still being canceled or postponed into the fall. So we are far from over. And that's why we wanted to, bring together some experts in the field, leaders, and it's not just that the folks that we're visiting with today, are, within their communities. These guys are industry leaders that people go to all the time, and they have opinions, not just about their own events, but about the industry. So I'm so excited to get started. But before we look ahead, I thought just again, by way of educating all of our viewers, if you guys could each kind of go back through to 2020 and give us a quick idea of how the pandemic impacted your 2020 events. I said, what kind of lemonade did you make out of the lemons that you got? So Doug, let's start with you, because you guys are in California, and I think it goes without saying at the onset that all of us and each of our races in all of the states are going to be largely impacted by what the local COVID recovery plan is. And we can do a lot of things, but it doesn't really matter if we can't get the permits because of what's happening at a statewide level. But tell us what happened with your events, Doug.
Thanks, Jan. And I appreciate you mentioning about the size of the endurance sport community. I think most people think locally about their neighborhood 5K or half marathon. But if you multiply that across the country and even across the world, it is a very big community. But it's also a very, I guess, also a kind of a small and in some ways a very small and friendly community. I didn't know that Mike and I had Western Illinois connections, for example. And I've known Beth for many years, and she just contributed for an article I'm writing for an industry trade publication that should come out next week. But back to your question, in hindsight, it was silly for any of us last March to think that we could just postpone our races 4, 5, 6 months and it'd be fine later in the summer or in the fall. And many races did that because we just didn't know how debilitating this pandemic was going to be. And we first moved our late April race to late August. And then that didn't seem to work well in the community. So then we moved it to the middle of November. But by June, we realized that wasn't realistic either. So we canceled all of our events in 2020. I had no entry income for in-person events. And we've even proactively, starting last fall, canceled all of our 2021 events, which we were one of the few races to kind of plant that flag early, but mainly because we start registration for our April events typically in summer. And if there's one thing I think a lot of us learned is don't make a promise you don't know that you can keep. And that's kind of the theme of the event industry right now is we really don't know when it's going to be safe to hold our traditional races. Some people are putting on smaller races. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But our traditional race for us, it's 2 large race weekends, as you explained, Jan. And California is the most populous state. California has the most COVID cases. And in many ways, California has been the most restrictive. No one is getting permits to do any events of any size anywhere in the state of California. And I don't think that's going to change until we reach kind of that herd immunity level. Maybe by late summer, early fall, you might be able to get a permit for an event later this year. But I don't know that we'll do anything in 21 except hopefully make good plans for 22.
I before I go to Beth and then Mike, I watched back the webinar that we did in the fall with you, Beth, and it was early September, and at the time about making promises you can't keep, Doug, I said at the time we opened registration for 2021 back in June, and on Beth's webinar I said if I had to do it again I wouldn't have opened registration. And then of course like 2 weeks later we paused registration for 2021, and then now we've since canceled our race weekend for the original date slot. And while we have a window to try to do something in the fall, we're far from knowing what that might be. Certainly not probably a 3-day 7-event weekend. So thank you for that. I do want to swing back and have you tell us about what you did, a fun event in the summer that was virtual. But Beth, how about for you guys?
Well, we do put on a lot of events, as you mentioned, and so we started pivoting, with our March events, and we pivoted so much that my head is spinning. So we spent the first couple months just keep kicking the can down the street, basically. And but knew, what was really on our minds was the marathon and what would happen with the marathon. And that isn't something we can kick the can down the street for long. So we actually really made lemonades out of these lemons for our community. We haven't put a real race on, a live race, since last January of 2020. Every event has either been canceled or moved to virtual. I can tell you that the virtual races we put on have been very successful, and people have really been enthusiastic about them. And I think they've opened up new new audiences for us as well. They've been more inclusive for families to do things together. We've been able to engage a lot more athletes with disabilities, walkers who can participate in all these things. So that has been good. In terms of the marathon, we made a decision in June that it was not happening. It's an October marathon. It was not going to happen. And the best thing we could do for our community is to make it virtual, make sure we had enough sponsorship commitments behind us to pay for the work we were going to have to do and the swag we were going to have to provide, and then take every penny of registration money and donate it to local charity. And that was really successful, and successful in terms of it really captured the passion that people have for local charities, and it gave us a rallying point within the community to use the marathon as that point. And we ended up for the year giving $512,000 away because of it. So that was our 2020 world.
Wow. That's fabulous. You know, I don't know if any other races did what you did, but what a brilliant pivot and strategy. And you're always at the front of coming up with great ways to make the best. So that's a wonderful story. Mike, you know, you work for a company that we all, you know, in our industry, we lean on, but you guys aren't immune as well. But before we talk about the impact, I do want to use this opportunity to spotlight Nuun. You guys are one of our sponsors, and it is, you know, still an up and coming brand. And I thought you could just tell us a little bit about the birth story and how it's going and what makes Nuun. Hold on a second. What makes Nuun so awesome?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great intro. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to follow that up. And yeah, thanks again for having me on. It's awesome to be on with Beth and Doug, obviously titans in the industry. So I feel honored to be here. But yeah, great question. So yeah, so Nuun, we've been around actually 16 years, so up and coming. You know, I would say growing fast, but you know, still in the, you know, smaller organization, I would call us. But we were sort of founded at this, you know, I think you said it in my intro, at the cross section of health and wellness and fitness. And as a brand, we create functional hydration products for the on-the-go lifestyle. And so, you know, every product we make and create is, you know, clean, better for you version of either something that's already existed or, you know, a completely new product category. And so, you know, we've definitely taken a leadership position in terms of, you know, providing products that give you what you need without what you don't, for folks that are, you know, focused on health and wellness and most important, fitness. And, you know, outside of what we created in terms of products, we very much get up in the morning to inspire people to move more. And so, you know, when I think about that, that's the reason that we've built really strong relationships, you know, with folks like you and Beth and her event series, because we want to inspire folks to move more, and we want to do it through incredible experiences. And so, you know, that's kind of how we've really built our community over the years. And, you know, similar to what Doug and Beth were talking to, we had to make some pretty drastic changes because the structure of our organization was such that we could be there to, you know, be a part of these great experiences. And so, yeah, I don't like to use the word pivot anymore because I feel like it's the most overused word of 2020 for sure. I think it hands down. But
was it the word of the year? I'm wondering.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if any would vote for it as word of the year, but it definitely got used a lot, right? So I'm actively trying to remove it. But yeah, I think, you know, we had to make some changes in how we come to life as a brand and how we engage with our consumers. And so, you know, that's still ongoing. As everyone knows, this is a pretty fluid situation, what's happening. And, you know, I think our biggest takeaway has just been we have to be incredibly adaptable in how we meet our consumers where they are, both physically and mentally. So.
When you guys first started, did you have as many different, I mean, I have become a fan of Nuun over the years, and I drink a lot of the immunity stuff because I think it's my go-to during the day. But I know that you have a bunch of different compositions, and obviously we're giving everybody samples that's doing the crisscross. That's the sport one. I've got one that's recovery. How did that expansion of your line, or what would be the right word to describe the different iterations of the product?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we launched, we were essentially like we've been around 16 years. We were like a 10 or 11 year startup. So I look at back when I started at Nuun, we were a hydration product. So we had one product, and we were slow growing and sort of building this community over time. And so we really didn't start to innovate and expand until about 5 years ago. And so we added some caffeinated products first. We began to innovate in the immunity space. We created an endurance product, which is powdered, really hyper focused on your longest, hardest efforts. And we've really continued from there. So we have a more daily hydration product and vitamins, a product aimed at rest and recovery, and continuing to innovate and find places that we can create products, for a point of functional need for our active consumers. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's kind of
that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's because I've noticed that the newer products. And by the way, people locally, you can get Nuun down at my Lindeman's Body and Soul store. I know he's been selling it for some time, which is great. Well, I want to shift to 2021 as we start looking forward. But Doug, you've kind of already told us. Is there any point during this year where you think you could potentially put any kind of event on? I know that that's something that we're certainly looking at, not necessarily our big event, but we may do something small that we know we could do within COVID restrictions. Are you guys thinking about that at all?
Certainly, and it seems like for much of the past year, we've all been thinking maybe we'll know more in a couple weeks and a couple months. I think the second half of 2021 should look a lot different than the first half of 2021. I think we're all hopeful about that. Although that kind of fits that pattern of, the blue skies are right around the corner. But now with the vaccine, once we kind of get the distribution and activation a little more effective, I think the second half will look better. So potentially our second large race weekend is typically the second weekend in November, and that's our Monterey Bay Half Marathon, which is about a 10 to 11,000 person event with a half marathon, a 5K, and a 3K. We typically open registration for that in March or April. We're not going to do that because we don't know if it can happen. But perhaps by the time we get to May or June, again, that right around the corner, blue sky scenario, we might be able to look at putting something together in the fall. But I think a lot of organizations are concerned too is what are the participant expectations? Are they going to expect that you're just going to have an event just like you've always had an event? And that's probably not realistic even for even 2022. And I know we'll probably talk about how our events change, but potentially we'll know by maybe May or June if we can do something in the fall. And it may just be a non-half, a less than half marathon, maybe a 10K, 10-mile type event. So many unknowns, but we're hopeful that maybe by May or June, putting something on in November will be allowed. We can actually get a permit and we can build an audience for it.
Yeah. Okay. Beth, I know you guys have come out with a plan for this year that has lots of contingencies. Walk us through that real quick.
Yeah, sure. Well, we've started the year we still are putting on virtual events, and we will be doing virtual events through April. We'll then have smaller live events starting in May, and they'll be hybrid. We will forever now offer the option of a virtual event for people, which has been one of the silver linings, I think, through this. But so we will start that. what we've done, we have opened the marathon for registration. Again, it's in October, second weekend in October. And we have gone into a temporary refund policy so that we want you to register now. We want you to train properly and long enough. So we open registration now so that you have a full, 9 months for you to train for the marathon or the half marathon in October. We will come out in June, we hope, it's the beginning of June, that we can tell you this is exactly what the event is going to look like this year. And when we do, if you're not happy with what we have told you at that point, we'll give you 100% of your money back so that you can feel comfortable that you are not going to lose your investment, your financial investment in the event. So that is our game plan. Well, but we also know there is no event that we can put on this year, including the Eversource Hartford Marathon, that will have the capacity that we have typically and normally. So our big challenge is, what can we afford to put on for the limited amount of registration fees that we will have? So that's
you raise a really good point, which is these events that we put on have huge price tags, and if we don't get the runners that we need, it's just not possible. And it's been financially difficult for all of our organizations. I know, Doug, you suffered some staff losses that you had to do. I mean, it's just brutal. So that does factor in. And I was reading your refund policy. I understand that if people register by a certain window, they'll get 100% back. And then there's another window. If they register in, they'll get partial. That's that very upfront, transparent, this is what we're going to do. I think that is a good planning, and good for you to have something like that. And I know you've been doing a lot of virtual events, which is really impressive. I've only done one, and I can barely handle one. So it's good for you. So Mike, how about you guys? What does 2021 look like for Nuun?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think there's two sort of different answers, and actually I think Doug summarized it really well in that that hope is not a strategy, right? So just hope that events come back and that we can reach consumers that way. It's we can't look at it that way. And so from our experiential marketing side of things, so the team that I've led over the last few years here at Nuun, we're taking a very conservative approach. I think one of the interesting things that maybe it doesn't get talked about a lot right now, but from a brand standpoint, for us, we're a little concerned about, when we come back to more normal in-person events, the one-to-one in-person interaction is what we're there for, and we really want to build connections that way. And if people aren't comfortable having one-on-one interactions with other people, where does that put us? And so, we're really approaching it conservatively, in that we want to make sure when we come back and when we put people on site that it's safe, and a lot of the hesitations are gone, so that we can have and make meaningful connection. And so, I'm sort of saying all that to say, kind of TBD. We're planning, with the hopes that we can execute on site at some events later on in the fall. But what I will say is it'll be a small number, not our typical, 600 or 700 that we're at each year. So very, very different, just like everybody's experiencing. But so a small number of events that we'll look to be on site at. And then as an organization, being a brand, we've been able to speak to a lot of new consumers in 2020, given this big shift in consumer trends towards movement and fitness and wellness. And for us, a big strategy for this year is how do we retain and continue to engage those consumers that have found our products in their movement journey. And so putting together a lot of new programs to really create content and do a lot of storytelling to keep those folks engaged. And so that's a lot of what we're doing in 2021. I got to get used to saying that. It's February.
I know. I've lost all sense of time. What's today? Tuesday? It could be a Sunday as far as I'm concerned. So, well, what do you think are the biggest challenges that the running industry generally, and our individual events specifically, and are going to face as we come out of this. I mean, I've noticed that there seems to be different models. Some events are opening, like I saw this with the Flying Pig Marathon. They opened just with virtual, and they might top up to going live, whereas other events have opened with live and they say we might have to convert to virtual. I mean, certainly something that people could do, but outside of that, do you think the biggest challenges are that we face? Doug, what comes to top of mind to you?
Well, for those of us in the event business, we really know how to put on races. We don't have a lot of experience not putting on races. And that's what we've been forced to do, is learn how to not put on a race. And it's been a real challenge because organizing an event is all about trying to turn unknowns into knowns and trying to lower the risk factor and build an environment. There's still so many unknowns, whether it's the ability to get a permit for your event, will the runners return, will the volunteers feel comfortable coming out, will your vendors and suppliers feel comfortable, will your sponsors, like Mike at Nuun for many events, will they feel comfortable coming out, because do they get that one-on-one interaction that's so important and such an important part of why they're at your race, for that consumer experience. Everything, I think anyone who thinks they have answers to all that is wishful thinking. So I think for us, it's going to be continuing to look at what best practices are, see the experiences of some of the smaller events that have started around the country and some of the larger events perhaps around the world. And I don't want to use the P word and talk about pivot, but we do need to adjust our races based on whatever the best practices are, which are continuing to evolve. I don't think any of us know exactly, but we all have, I don't know how many documents I have saved in I call it my ramp up folder on my computer of tips and ideas and examples of things to implement when we're actually ready and allowed to ramp back up. What it costs, how people will respond to it, whether it'll be successful, those are still the big unknowns. But I think it's going to take 2 to 4 years to get back to probably what our event looked like in 2019 or early 2020, at least that long.
Well, that's
certainly that long to be financially viable.
Yeah, wow. Beth, what would you add to that?
Yeah, well, Doug pretty much, summed it all up well, but I think that's the part that it's the unknown, and how long that unknown will last is, I think, our biggest challenge of, can we survive it? Yeah, we can survive for a year or maybe 2 years as we've been doing. But what if we have to go another couple of years beyond this? What will our organizations look like at that point? And can we rebuild? Where will all, the 4,000 volunteers we've cultivated and cajoled over these years to be a loyal volunteer for HMF, will they have forgotten all about us? Will we have to rebuild from almost ground zero? So that's, that's, unfortunately, that's what we're looking at, but that's not the way we think, actually, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and go ahead. Yeah. Well, and I think your idea of I think about it as a path back. Doug, I've got a folder I call Return to Running. It's like but different name, same thing. Every time I get something, I put it in there, but a path to return. So is it, starting with, like, Beth, you're going to try to do some smaller in-person races. It's not just what's most likely allowable, like we can get a permit to do that, but also gets our staff back, because we're all going to be rusty. When it's been a while since we've done our volunteers, like, wow, what do I do? How do I do things? And build confidence among the runners that they can feel like they can come to a race, even if it's only 250 people. We can stack these. Now, is that financially sustainable model? Probably not, but we're going to take what we can get as we move on that path to a return of something that looks like what we used to do. Mike, do you have anything that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would build on is, you know, the watch out in, I think all of our, and I'm speaking like broadly in the industry, but in our want and excitement to come back that and bring events back, that we don't strip away too many of the things that make all of our events an incredible experience. And so that when they come back, you know, what makes them great, bits and pieces, and you know, bits and pieces add up to a whole lot if you're not careful, and really to the detriment of the overall experience. I think that's the one watch out. It's you know, being safe for sure, but being safe and doing it in a way where you can still put on an incredible experience, I think is you know, my one watch out.
Yeah, well, I think I know, and I speak, you know, with good confidence that Beth, Doug, our race, I mean, we do care about the individual runner, and so all the things that we do that aren't even about race day, it's about communication, it's about response, it's all the things that we do. Those things aren't going to go away, and that and the loyalty that we have among our participants over the years, that's really going to help us. I think runners just need to be kind of patient, because you know, no one wants to be back more than we do. I mean, it's our livelihood, it's what we do, and our events are so important to the communities that we're in. But you know, we can only do what we can do within what's allowed, but we'll, you know, plan for as much as possible. But I love the idea of smaller events stacking on one after the other to kind of to come back. What are some of the logistical changes that we could prepare our participants to expect when, even if we're doing a 250 or 500 person race? Beth, as you think about those first events coming out for you this spring, what changes have you made to stay within COVID regulations, but also to have a safe event? Can you walk us through a couple of those?
Yeah, I think the big, and we've done all the standard things you would think of as, you know, social distancing and you know, all the you know, how we're distributing water and how we're handling. We're not doing a plethora of buffet food at the end of the race. You know, now it's prepackaged things. But the biggest thing we've done that I think will help others as well is we've put together a health advisory committee of experts and professionals throughout Connecticut in the medical field, the infectious disease, the public health, pharmaceutical, and all of that expertise. They've agreed to give us their time and their guidance to create a real, true safety plan to reopen and to be able to put our events on. And it's not us creating that plan, where it is us certainly from a logistics standpoint, but it's the experts and their expertise that are helping us. And so we are creating this plan that we'll share with everybody else in the endurance industry that can be able to use it. So that's what we're working on currently.
Yeah, I'm just curious, can I follow up with the question about how are you going to do hydration stations differently?
We're working on it, Jan.
You're still working on it. Okay. I mean, it seems like a great opportunity to go to the cupless hydration station. I just saw California Coalition just put out a video last week, and it was Paul Riddle, is that his name? The old triathlete.
Paul Huddle.
Paul Huddle, yeah. You'd go up with your handheld, and your foot pressed a pedal, and it deposited water into your cup. I thought, wow, that's cool. It's easy to do in a small race, but those are the kind of things that we do have, that sort of touchless, humanless experience that would, you know, given the choice of not doing a race or having to get my water differently, I'm going to opt for getting my water differently. So Doug, what do you think are some of the changes that runners can expect?
Well, I wrote down my own note about the healthy advisory committee, so I'll put that in my ramp up. Yeah, I made a note about that. Good idea. Beyond just your medical director, who's you know, we often go to kind of expand that. So great tip, Beth. Yeah, I mean, again, we're months away from even planning an event, but we'll probably do all the kind of what is being known now as kind of the standard things, plexiglass here and there and hand sanitizer everywhere. And, maybe we'll do a virtual expo and mail bibs instead of asking people to actually come to packet pickup. Those are some of the ideas. Probably completely revise our finish line flow and our food and medal distribution. Certainly the aid stations are a subject. So what's a little bit frustrating though is an event. Our races are a chance for people that have a common interest to get up close and personal with other people who have that same interest. And I know it's necessary, but it sure is frustrating to think that we're trying to take we have to take the human touch out of a very human touch event.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the status we're in right now. It kind of goes back to saying we're really good at putting on events. We're not so good at not putting on events. So now we're trying to figure out how to put on an event where people don't have to touch another person. And that's really a challenge for us. But it's what we have to do, I guess, at least for the next year or so.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really talked about the start line, and it probably seems obvious to us, but runners, you can expect start lines not to look like what they do. You're going to be sitting in your car until it's your time slot to come and occupy an X on the street that's in a box that's only got so many people in it, and then it's going to take a longer time, for races to start. But again, work with us, be patient. If we can put on anything in a safe way, those are some of the things that we're going to have to do. Beth, you talked about a silver lining. Mike, I want to flip over to silver linings. Have there been some silver linings for Nuun in the pandemic?
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit before. There's sort of two. One is just related to consumer habits, with these deep habits that have been created during the last almost year now, where physical activities become more prominent in most consumers' lives. For us, that's a silver lining. It broadens. It essentially makes the consumer pool that we target larger. And so, that's really positive for us as a brand. And then the second one, when I think about experiential marketing as it relates to Nuun and in-person interaction, this is giving us an inflection point to think differently about how we come to life at events. And so, for one, when we come back to events in person, there won't be any sample cups or any waste generated by our Nuun-owned activations. So we will be completely cup free. We will be completely waste free. So our goal is to be zero waste when we relaunch. So working on that now. And Doug spoke to it a little bit. It does make it tough when a lot of the constraints that are likely going to be in place, as far as distancing goes and low touch, it does make it a challenge, but it's given us this inflection point to step back and say, okay, if we were to start over today, how would we do it differently? And that was one of the things that rose to the top right away. And so, I guess those are for silver linings. Any sort of like pause in business as usual does give you an opportunity to sort of take a big step back and look at how you operate. And so, that's, for Nuun, for my personal life, for all sorts of things. So I think it's silver linings.
Well, there's this, we all see it. There's been so many people who have either rediscovered movement or have found movement as a way of dealing with the pandemic. And hopefully we can find ways to bring those all into our events as well. But Beth, you talked about the silver lining of virtual. Yeah, I think we will all always have virtual events, certainly hand in hand with our in-person events, and whether we also have virtual events that stand on their own, that's probably something we're all thinking about. But can you think of other silver linings that that your organization has experienced as a result of the pandemic?
Well, we're looking forward to these new runners that are out there and that they're ready to come and experience live races, give them something to compete more for, or just complete, to complete races and enjoy that. So that's a silver lining, I think, for all of us that there's just more people getting fit. So yeah, and of course being able to give more back to our community has been the true ultimate silver lining for us.
Yeah. Doug?
I think a couple of areas. One is I think a lot of the runners maybe no longer take the race organizations for granted, or they realize that behind successful races are individuals like Beth, like you, Jan, that live to put on races for them, and that we've been cut off at the knees. I know I did a Facebook Live back when we announced no 2021 events, and about I had to explain about laying off 70% of our staff, and as a nonprofit, we're just going to struggle to survive and eat into our reserve fund every month. And I got pretty good response to that. People realized that there's really human beings behind these events, and we're trying the best we can to build the environment for people to have a great experience. Beth does it 35 times a year. I just do it a couple of times a year with a couple of large events. But we're kind of a bucket list event, so people want for years and years to get into the Big Sur Marathon and come out and run our event, and it breaks our heart to not be able to do that. The other, I guess, related to that is perhaps a lot of participants were kind of forced to learn a little bit about the economics of putting on these races, and why we couldn't give 100% refunds to everybody, and the buried costs that are involved, and how we had to explain to people that, yeah, your entry fee kind of helps pay for me, helps pay for my salary and the office and the utilities and insurance and all those things too. It doesn't just pay for your shirt and your medal and your toilet. So a little bit of perhaps participant education has happened, silver lining, that maybe we can build upon as we continue to educate about the new and different organization that we have to put in place for race weekend. Hopefully runners will maybe read the instructions a little bit more, and now wishful thinking, right? And at least understand what goes into the process, that it's a lot more than they probably ever realized, both in cost and time and labor. So if there's a silver lining, it's maybe they got to peek behind the curtain a little bit, what happens in these race organizations.
Yeah, I think those are really good points. I know we have all been on the receiving end of many very angry emails, and the nice ones really do brighten our day, but there are a lot of people that do think, like, I bought this shirt, it doesn't fit, I bring it back, I get my money back. It's just like not how the running industry is, and that keyboard courage that people have when they just fire off those notes. But I think you're right that there's a lot more to it, and without opening up our book, we are been able to tell them, look, we're however many weeks out we were, like, those are sunken costs, and if we had a money tree out back, we would love to give you all your money back, but it just doesn't work that way. I want to end by asking each of you what the pandemic has taught you as an industry leader, and then also each of you as just a human being. Mike, let's start with you.
Ooh, all right, that's a good question.
You're telling me I've been asking good questions all day, Mike.
No, I mean it. Yeah, so I think just for me personally during the pandemic, so my wife and I had our first son, in the midst of all this, and we moved across the country, so we did some wild stuff, or life-changing things. I don't know if wild's the right word, but I think we've been, like many people, have been living this life that's very, very low in excitement but high in comfort over the last year. And I think the things that I am taking away now, it's like just being really grateful for little things. So like one really good example is, in my pre-pandemic life, I would not have gotten to be around my newborn son all day, every day. Like, he's right behind that door. And so, I'm super grateful for that. Like, there's so many moments I would have missed. And, I think a lot of that is you know, a lot of people talk about like work-life balance, but I actually think work-life integration is what's happening to everybody right now. So, you know, you're having to figure out how to integrate work into your life and vice versa in a way that works for you and your partner, and your family. And I think it's actually really meaningful. And so for me, I feel like my quality of life has really improved. And so in many ways, obviously I want to go run a race and I want to go do exciting things and travel, which I can't, but I'm really, really grateful for all the things that I have. And I think that's like my biggest takeaway in this year. Those are more like personal related, but there's
Yeah,
some,
that's cool. Yeah, let's keep it personal, because I think we all have. Beth, how about for you?
Well, certainly family, of course. You know, lucky our bubble is our kids, my new grandson, and my husband. I think, and I'm very grateful for all of that. Grateful for what I have in my life, and I think I'm most grateful, to be honest with you. I've been married to my husband for a long time, like 37 years. I think it might be a little bit less. I can't remember, and I'm not doing math right now. But he and I, through this, are not totally sick of each other. I'm really grateful that I'm not totally sick of him. We actually have been spending, 24/7 together, and it's amazing after 37 years that it's still like really fun. And
That's awesome.
That's my
awesome.
my best, I think.
Good for you. Doug?
Well, those are some really powerful, personal impacts. I was thinking the other day when I took another just simple, quiet walk by myself through my neighborhood. I didn't want run. I wasn't on my bike. I wasn't in a hurry. I just something that I probably never would have taken the time to do, because I was always rushing and working and on catching a flight or something. And just to walk around and it's funny how many times I've done that in the past year, probably more than I've done in the previous 30 years. Just go for a walk without any other purpose than just get outside and enjoy what I normally don't take the time to see. So it kind of builds on what Mike and Beth have said, which is just appreciate the things that are right around us, whether it's your newborn son, whether it's your husband of many decades, and your family, or just your neighborhood. I count my runs now not in miles or pace as much as in interactions with dogs. And if I have a 3 or 4 dog run, that's a great run, because dogs are always happy and they don't know anything about what's going on in the world. They just want to get their head scratched and their belly rubbed. And the simple things like that, maybe I appreciate them more than ever.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I want to thank all of you guys for being with me today. I want to end by sharing some exciting news from Human Kinetics. Like us, they are also hopeful that sometime this year we will be able to return to in-person racing. And so they want to help you train for that big event by giving you a chance to win an ebook. So they've got so many running books, conditioning, stretching, you name it, sports nutrition. After this webinar, probably tomorrow, you'll get an email from Sue Outlaw, our trusted host at the front of the broadcast. She will send you an email where you can sign up to be one of the people that wins an ebook from Human Kinetics. So watch for that follow-up email. Our next Crisscross webinar will be Tuesday, March 9th at the same time, noon Central. I'm so excited about our topic and our special guests. As you all know, a big part of the Crisscross has been learning about and celebrating the great state of Illinois. And so joining me on March 9th to discuss hidden gems in the Prairie State, the coolest places you never knew existed in Illinois, will be CEO and president of our Visit Champaign County organization, Jane DeLuce, as well as Corey Joe, who's the president and CEO of Great Rivers and Route Tourism Bureau, based in Alton, Illinois, out in the land where Doug was from. So they will be our guests. Again, the topic will be hidden gems in the Prairie State, the coolest places you never knew existed in Illinois. So that is going to wrap up today's. Again, Doug, my friend, Mike, new friend, Beth, you guys have all been to the race before, Beth and Doug as guests. We love you guys, and stay well, and thank you so much. And Sue, thanks to HK as always. That'll
Thanks,
do it.
Thanks for being here.
Jan.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, see you guys.
Hi, everybody. Stay safe.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.